always in Natrona County, we want to honor and recognize our veterans, both those who have served and those who are serving, who have family members that have served. If you are a veteran, please rise. Okay, a round of applause. If you have a family member who is serving, if you can please rise and be recognized as well. All right. From our table, do we have our list of dignitaries and elected officials, please? This is really hard to keep track of, so now I've assigned it to our check-in committee, so I don't miss anyone. Okay, so our dignitaries tonight, we have former U.S. Representative Barbara Cuban in the back of the room and precinct member. In no particular order, we have Representative Joe McGuire, Representative Tom Walters, Representative Bunky Lout, and Representative Chuck Gray. A round of applause for our representatives. We also have with us Senator Jim Anderson, Senator Bill Landon, and Senator Drew Perkins. Round of applause, please. Do we have any other elected officials in the room that we've missed? No? Okay, thank you. So that process is working. That's a great thing. Thank you all for coming out tonight and for serving our state. It's really important the work you do, and really appreciate all of our elected officials coming out and participating with the county party. As far as correspondence, I do not have any official correspondence tonight. Madam Secretary, any correspondence? Okay. All right, so we're going to begin with the appointments for this evening. I'd like to appoint, as parliamentarian, Ryan McConaughey, our teller committee. So if you're a guest, I chose 3 individuals to essentially count the votes tonight. Crystal McGuire, Greg Hager, and Kyle Gamrod. Pat, you're off the hook back there. If you guys, are you guys willing to serve on the teller committee this evening? Okay, great, thank you. Reports and Credentials Committee. The individuals checking you in tonight: Leslie Hendry, Karen Hinchy, Crystal McGuire, Ryan McConaughey, Andy Sanders, Letitia Drake, and Joe McGuire. So those are the appointments I'd like to make for this evening, so I'd entertain a motion to approve those appointments.
Move to approve.
Jennings, 1-9, so moved.
Is there a second?
2-8, 6-8.
Thank you. Any discussion on the appointments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Ryan, if you could please come on up and join us here up at the front table.
Give me just a minute.
Next on the list is the approval of the agenda. The agenda was passed out. The updated agenda was distributed late last week with more final details and a couple of meetings that were added to the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda and bring that to the floor for discussion. Yes?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that we actually remove item number 8A and 8B from the agenda.
Sorry, a point of order. The agenda has not been moved to the floor for discussion.
I would move the agenda.
Okay.
And I would move with the agenda that we delete items 8A and 8B.
So you are making a motion to approve a edited agenda? Okay. Is there a second to move the agenda with 8A, B, and C, you said? Is that correct? A and B? Okay. All right, so the motion on the floor is to approve the agenda, however, cross out 8A and B. And we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on those topics? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Senate Committee. What I would I would
proceed.
like to
So-
proceed with part two first, please.
So the motion and second did not specify that initially, so the initial motion had both of those removed in the second.
I did that with division.
So I moved to divide the question. So right now we're on the division question. So, and it would need a second. I'm asking if it can be divided. You have to approve, yes, it looks divisible.
Okay?
Okay, and then I named what Division 1 would be 8A, Division 2 would be 8B. I would need a second for that division, and then I would pick which division I wanted to address first.
I mean, I would prefer not to divide. You know, we have a lot on the agenda tonight, and I think if someone's going to remove one, they're going to remove both or not. So I think by dividing these, we're just delaying the meeting.
I don't believe so. So did I get a second on the division?
Second.
Okay, so we do have a second on division. So I would like to proceed with division number 2.
Okay?
I will try to keep it as brief as possible.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So 8B has to deal with the WRP Governance Revenue Review and Feedback Committee update and resolution. So I know this topic was addressed and voted on in the Executive Standing Committee a while back. The resolution that was moved there was that the Natrona County Republican Party and Executive Committee oppose any sort of grading and evaluation of bills and legislators by the State Central Committee. And I realize that passed there. However, that was really out of order and is considered by Robert Rules of Order to be null and void, as the Executive Standing Committee does not have the authority to pass rules and regulations, which is solely duly reserved to you guys, the Central Committee, to make those decisions. No action of the board can alter or conflict with any decision made by the Assembly of this society, and any such action of the board is null and void. What this addresses is that we already have a resolution on the books, number 43, which has been duly passed by this society, by the Central Committee. Therefore, a board or a committee cannot issue a resolution that is in conflict with that, because it would immediately become null and void. So I really would like to, since the resolution that's in front of us right now is really in a conflict with that resolution we have on the books, if this was to pass, how would we enforce this one, and how would we enforce that one? If we try to enforce this one would negate that. If we tried to enforce this one would negate it. And that's why a conflict is null and void. So that's why I'm asking for your vote, your yes vote, to delete this from the agenda, because it's really a conflict. Thank you.
All right, just a couple points of clarification on the bylaws. If you look
Mr. Chairman, you're not allowed to debate.
I'm actually a precinct representative as well, so technically I can.
No.
Not when you're acting chairman. You're supposed to be impartial.
Madam Vice Chairman, would you mind coming up? Kim, can you please come up front?
I think he's got a plan.
Yes. At this point, I'm going to ask the Vice Chairman to serve as chairman, and I'm going to act as precinct committee man to explain some of the points that were just made that were incorrect. All right, thank you for those comments. If you look at page 25 5. It's number 9, letter H, powers of the executive committee, numbers 3 and number 4. In addition to calling meetings and filling vacancies, which are 1 or 2, number 3 is to ratify emergency actions taken by the county chairman between meetings of the executive committee. And then number 4, to further the interests of the Republican Party in Natrona County in any manner authorized by law or not inconsistent with provisions of these bylaws. So the executive committee actually does have authority to pass resolutions it deems necessary, and then the typical protocol is to bring them back to this central committee for vote and discussion. The executive committee met between the last 2 central committee meetings, and tonight we have these items on the agenda. The second point is this is a different resolution. Any committee member can put forward a resolution to be considered, debated, and voted on in this body. And that resolution, as my colleague here pointed out, is different than the one that was already voted on and passed at the executive committee. So by both of those points, I would ask you to vote no to this change in the agenda.
Madam Chairman,
Okay.
so it strictly says in Robert's Rules of Order that the only power that a standing committee has is those dedicated by this citizen. That has to be in writing. It has to state you can pass policies and rules. And it does not state that. The betterment of the Republican Party, and then if it comes in any type of conflict or question, they have no authority to vote. Now, what they should have done and could have done was, hey, this resolution, we would like to recommend it coming to the Central Committee to vote. But them passing that and then stating that the Natrona County Republican Party, so they're saying all of you have already agreed to that. You're speaking for this body, which tells you guys what to do. So there's a real big problem with this here. And I think the best thing to do is just get rid of this right now, because when it comes back up on the floor, if somebody brings up this different resolution, we're just going to have, it's in conflict with what we have right now, and it's null and void.
Any more discussion?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, you cannot surrender the chair, address a matter before this body, and then retake the chair on the same matter. You cannot take the chair back until we resolve this.
Mr. Parliamentarian, I'm going to now refer to our actual parliamentarian on this matter. Okay.
Go ahead.
Madam Vice Chairman, this is Bruce Hinchy, Precinct 310. We're debating the issue before we've even got to it. Most of us, or some of us, don't even know what the whole issue is. I think we should go ahead and defeat this motion, approve the entire agenda, then when we get to A, B, C, D, whatever they all are, we can debate it fully, let everyone understand it, and then make a decision, an informed decision, to vote on these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hershey?
I appreciate Senator Landon's perspective and agree with it. Peter Nicolason, for too, also on the executive committee and your state committee man. I would suggest that we ought to move forward with the actual business of the evening and not try to pull stunts and act in a way that I don't think is in accordance with how we ought to be acting. I think we ought to address the issue once it does come up. With regard to Robert's rules, they don't trump or supersede our bylaws, and so it is appropriate for the executive committee to pass resolutions that's within the powers of that body. Thank you.
JR?
J.R. Riggins, 2-1. I'm looking forward to talking about these resolutions, but the bylaws do expressly state that the Central Committee has exclusive power to pass resolutions. It doesn't give that to the Executive Committee, so they certainly were in the right to make a recommendation to pass, That was certainly good, but the broad range of media exposure, using this body, passing it, and then acting as if this body passed it was incorrect. But I do want to talk about the resolutions, and I would move forward on that.
Madam Chairman, Jim Anderson, 1-9. I'm on and against this division. I agree with the previous speaker that we're on the agenda, not on discussing each line item. And I would encourage the body to defeat this division and the next division and get on with the agenda. Thank you.
Bob, I 12-2. With all due respect to one of the comments, it wasn't a stunt. It said specifically in the Executive Committee resolution that the Natrona County Republican Party and the Executive Committee, the Republican Party never got to have a voice on that. Thank you.
First on 2A, and I support Mr. Reeder's proposition to for the division and to get rid of that resolution. I think what was done was very wrong. When there was a motion made in the executive committee, I was very disappointed that not one member called a point of order and brought to the attention of everybody else that that power belongs to the central committee to make resolutions and policies according to my understanding of the bylaws. And so in light, I believe that the executive committee exceeded the powers granted to it by this committee, and I believe this resolution should be thrown out and be considered.
All right, are there any other comments?
Question.
All right, so actually, I'm going to call for the vote then. I think we should have the teller committee come up, and we should do, I believe, standing. All right, so.
No, the question is called, this is not required a 2/3 vote if there's still a debate. We can't hear. Right.
The vote is on readers.
No.
Right, yes, but I was going to have the teller committee count to save time. So.
Madam Chair, can we get the count so we know what 2/3 is or what majority?
Oh, yes, do we have the number?
That's what we were working on.
Oh, that's what they're working on. Are you guys close? Having a number?
Madam Chairman, just maybe to explain this situation here. So, please speak up. If somebody calls for go to the mic.
So to kind of clear up a little bit for Linda, her question, since we have a little time here and a little break, if you will. So on a previous question, first of all, the chair doesn't have to, if somebody calls out previous question, that doesn't necessarily mean we go to the previous question. They're supposed to be recognized. However, time is of essence. So if somebody does do that and nobody objects that, hey, I want to debate, then at that time, if you address them in a second, then we have to vote, and a 2/3 vote would go back to the previous question. If nobody's up here to debate, though, however, then they can assume that it's pretty much obvious and unanimous to go to the previous question.
Madam Chair, Kit Jennings, 1-9. I would ask that the presenter of this motion agree to set it aside until the teller committee and the census has a full count. We can go forward with the treasurer's report. I know that's solely up to the presenter and the second of the motion.
I will recognize that request and ask trigger that motion. And hearing no objection, I will withdraw my motion.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Tom, just for clarity, the motion has been withdrawn, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much for some lively debate to start the meeting tonight. So now we're back to the number 5 on the agenda, and that's to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, James 19, I move that we approve the agenda.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Okay, Susan Thomas. Any further debate or discussion on the agenda? Okay, question has been called. Any objections? All those in favor of approving the agenda as provided, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay? No. Nay. Ayes have it. The agenda has been approved as presented. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval from the minutes, and these are the minutes of the Central Committee from June 24th, 2019 and July 30th, 2019. These were provided to everyone to review ahead of time. Let's begin first with any edits to the July 30th meetings. That was the special meeting for the coroner selection. Okay, no edits. What about the June 24th, 2019 meeting? Any edits, corrections, concerns? Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve both meeting minutes.
So moved. 11-1.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion on the approval of the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those passed. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to have our treasurer come up and give the treasurer's report, as well as present the budget. Just for, well, Cindy, I'll let you discuss the edits if you'd like.
Mr. Chairman. As far as the treasurer's report, we had a beginning balance of $15,540.58. We didn't recognize any income during the period. However, we did have a few expenses. The rental of the storage shed is still outstanding. The expenses associated with the meet and greet that we had at Yellowstone Garage, we saw that outstanding. We had a meeting notice for this meeting and our last meeting at the Ramcota. So we have $880.10 outstanding. So with an ending cash balance at this point of $14,660.48. Due to the generous contributions of people in here, we've recognized $709.55 in in-kind donations. Moving on to the budget, I think most of you got an email copy. There was a mistake on the budget. The first item there, the large donor campaign fund, should have represented $8,000, which would have given us $41,310 revenue with a $41,310 in anticipated expenses. So it was zero out and we'd have no net income or net loss. So there was just that one correction. With regards to the item listed under fundraising the Wyoming Republican Party, that's just representative of the fundraising that we're going to have to do to meet the anticipated expenses. So the other fundraising is based on prior years. Anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Again, just so everyone's clear, on the budget, there was a typo in that first line item of large donor campaign. The numbers and everything at the bottom were correct, but the first line, there was a typo on that. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to accept first the treasurer's report. So we'll begin with the treasurer's report, so I'll entertain a motion to accept that report.
So moved, 11-1. Second, Randy Wilson, 2-7.
Any further discussion on the treasurer's report? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Second item is the budget that was passed by the executive committee at the last meeting after quite a bit of work putting into these numbers and coming up with a budget and a reasonable amount. Any questions or discussion on the budget? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the current budget.
So moved, Kevin Moore.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. All right, so if the body will allow me for a minute to take a quick break in the agenda and ask Kit Jennings, Precinct Manager 19, to come up. Since we just talked about our budget and expenses, we do have a single item tonight that we'd like to auction off. This is a pretty hot item. Most of the events that this has been at, this particular hat has sold for quite a bit of money, pretty much every time it's gone up. These have been hard to come by. The state party and county parties have had trouble getting a bunch of these in, but we have one here tonight. So we're going to auction this off for donation to the Natrona County Republican Party. And if you hold that up for us here, Kit, I'll let you then grab the mic and do your magic.
Well, I don't need a mic, because I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I wear a hat that says Vega. It's red and white, and I tell you, I get comments on it every day. I get a high five at the Red Stop down in Chugwater yesterday. I love your hat. This, you're not going to find. You just can't buy it anywhere. We just found out that we have $880 for 10 cents worth of expenditures and no money coming in. So do I have an opening bid of $900 for this hat?
This hat actually sold for close to that at one of the state party fundraisers.
So what do I have an opening bid? $100 right back there, thank you, Senator. $100, we have 200, 100. I got 100, give me two. I got 200 back in here, give me three. I got 3, come on, we get 300. How about 350? 350, give me 3, I got 2. I need 3. Come on, we're not gonna 3. So I got 3. You got 3, now give me 4. Got 3, give me 4, give me 4, give me 4. I got 3. Come on, Bill, it's your turn. We'll go, how about 301? All right. 301. We got 3. Senator Perkins, we got it for $300. You want to touch it?
350.
Oh, I got 350 right here. All right, okay.
You can do 4.
No, come on. All she's doing is, you might as well go with 4. You got 350 right here, let's have 4. You got 4, got 350. You need 4, need 4. I got 4 right there. Got 4 right. Can we get more than that? Twice? Was that a fight? You get your thumbs up and you give your money away. All right. So we got 400 back here, right? So we're going to go for 450. We get 450. 450. Got 400. 450. 450. You know, we're halfway there. We're talking about the budget. We got 400. We're going to go once. Got 400. Going twice. This is your last time. 400. Sold.
Madam Treasurer, hopefully that helps with our budget. Can't make sure you get the cash on that one too. Awesome. Thank you very much. Really appreciate everyone bidding and contributing. That really does help us with our fundraising efforts to support our Republicans here in Natrona County. So thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to get back into the business for tonight. You know, a lot of people have been asking questions and want to know more information about what's been going on. They've seen some of the articles in the newspaper, they've seen emails, they've had side conversations with various people, both in Natrona County and around the state. And you know, what we're going to talk about here, all these things are public information. You can attend the meetings, you can see it. Almost all these meetings have been recorded by any number of individuals. At the last State Central Committee meeting, there must have been about 10 cameras up recording. So this information's out there. Everything that is going to be presented and discussed is nothing that cannot be shown or proven by activities that have already been documented. And you know, what we're going to talk about are a few things. We're going to talk about centralization of power. We're going to talk about secret committee meetings. We're going to talk about threats and intimidation, believe it or not. We're going to talk about limits on free speech. We're going to talk about propaganda. We're going to talk about party purity. We're also going to talk about those who enforce these rules and enforce these activities that are going on. You really can't make this up. If I were to tell you that's the list tonight, you would think this is a history lesson from the early 1900s. But these are examples of what we're talking about. These activities are happening right now. They're happening in the state. They're happening here in our own county to some degree. As many of you may or may not be aware, I know the media already has pictures of these things, so this is going to be nothing new, but I know a lot of people here haven't seen this yet. At our last State Central Committee meeting, myself and our state committee man were greeted with two objects sitting on our desk when we walked in. These are from another county party chairman, and I'll leave these up here for you to come take a look at later tonight, with some very derogatory comments that were sitting on our tables. And these were addressed to us specifically when we showed up. And these we kept because we want to make sure everyone has a chance to see that, again, we can't make this stuff up. This is what's actually happening. We're also going to discuss discipline, and we're Republicans, right? So we are accepting and actually encourage free speech. We encourage those to express their opinion. That's our fundamental rights. That's how we live. However, it seems like now that that's not okay. If you're not agreeing with everyone, disagreement seems to be a bad thing. You know, this is something that we're going to be discussing in these agenda items that we're talking about tonight. Now, around the state, what we've heard is that people are frustrated with the party. We see it. We see it at. You're not being recognized. We see it at a lot of events, and we see it being. Okay. Yes.
Are we going to have a motion? Because you're making your whole debate right here for these right now.
I'm
Yes, that's correct.
So you just put a motion on it, and then let's go through the process.
So I'm not discussing.
Are we on the agenda? Is this speech by the chair on the agenda? It is not, so we should move forward with the agenda, please.
And the chair is supposed to remain neutral and not.
That's correct. Yep.
All right, so we'll continue with the games tonight. That's exactly what these are on
That's not me to
there.
ask the chair to continue with the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you for your comments. You are getting close to being called out of order. All right, so tonight we have several items that we're going to discuss and talk about. We're going to ask for members to present information on those, and we're going to have debate and discussion on each of these topics the way we are supposed to and the way this party is to proceed. So item number 1 on our agenda tonight is a resolution supporting our First Amendment rights. This was distributed to everyone. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to move this to the floor for discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Bruce? Kim? Okay, so I'm going to read this resolution. Whereas one of the founding principles of our nation is freedom of expression and the right to question those in authority and to petition the government to address grievances. Whereas the First Amendment to the United States Constitution defines the fundamental rights of freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of peaceful assembly, freedom of religion, and freedom of expression. Whereas page 12 of the National GOP platform states limit on political speech serve only to protect the powerful and insulate incumbent office holders. Whereas any governing body, including the Wyoming State Republican Party, should not attempt to discourage or hinder our First Amendment rights through intimidation, disciplinary action, email messaging, or direct communication, either in private or publicly. Whereas any threat from a governing body, including the Wyoming Republican Party, that questioning their decisions or authority will subject a fellow Republican to a disciplinary committee review or disciplinary actions run counter to the basic Republican Party and constitutional principles. Be it resolved that the Natrona County Republican Party fully embraces our First Amendment rights and is opposed to any threat to any fellow Republican for simply expressing their First Amendment rights through an opinion or questioning the actions of a governing body, including the Wyoming State Republican Party. So that is the resolution that's on the floor. At this point, we'll open it up for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, J.R. Regan, 2-1.
Go to the microphone.
Mr. Chairman, J.R. Riggins, 2-1. Question and answer session. Who drafted, how many members of the executive committee and who drafted this resolution? Wrote it? Raise hands. Executive committee members who drafted it?
Actually, this question's out of order. We're discussing the motion that's on the floor, not the presentation of the motion. The motion was just made and seconded by a member of this committee, and the resolution itself is on the floor for discussion.
Yeah, I just want to know who wrote it. Anybody here in Wyoming, in Casper, or was this, I'm just curious.
An attorney in Cheyenne?
Is that out of order to know? I mean, when I write a resolution, I put my name on it. I mean, or, you know, I'm just wondering. So no, thank you. That's good. Go ahead.
Yes.
I also had a few questions. So it is my understanding that the selection process for the committee was done like most of the committees on the State Central Committee, the governance, oh, the wrong one, sorry. Wait a minute. My notes are out of order. Okay, so the first thing is this addresses the First Amendment in regards to the Wyoming Republican Party. It's a private organization, and it's governed by Robert's rules. And so actually, if they wanted to, as a private organization, they could limit free speech because the First Amendment is for Congress to not impose or infringe upon our God-given right to free speech. It doesn't say a private organization can't. But I don't see where the Wyoming Republican Party has even done that. We are bound to Chapter 20 of Robert's Rules of Order, which states that penalties can be imposed on any member tending to injure the good name of the organization, disturb its well-being, or hamper in its work. And that's Chapter 20, page 644, lines 3 through 5. So an example of tending to injure the good name of the organization would be running to the press and trying to cause doubt of the integrity of the organization in the Wyoming GOP. So I think a solution would be if you feel like they're hindering free speech and you don't feel that they're upholding our values, that the discussion tonight, instead of being on the resolution, should possibly be whether or not we remove ourselves from members of the Wyoming Republican Party.
Mr. Chairman, Peter Nicolason, 4-2. You'll see my name is under this resolution. I don't think it was in order necessarily, but Mr. Reagan's question is answered, I think, in part by at least my name being on this resolution. I speak strongly in favor of this resolution. I think that as a philosophical matter, to hear a member of this body say abridging the right to freedom of speech is striking to me, and I don't think that we should be quick to shut down free speech when, in fact, what occurred in this, as part of this long saga, was an individual from another county who's a member of the State Central Committee shed light on some of the concerns she had with some of the ongoings with the some of the members of the State Central Committee executive body. And there was some real concern with how delegates to the National Convention were going to be selected, and the bylaws are explicit in how that process is to occur. But the concern was that the certain members were going to attempt to change, essentially take some action to change the bylaws in an informal way. The actual result a few months later, approximately, was that there was a recognition by the State Central Committee leadership that, in fact, the person that had the concerns was correct, and that it was a matter that should be brought before the state convention. And so I think this goes to show very well why freedom of speech is critical, because shedding light on activities often results in correct conduct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Kathy I, Precinct 12-2, and I'm also a member at large on the Executive Committee. I have some questions for you. And the first one, and I would like specifics. What threat has been made by the Wyoming Republican Party? What threat are you talking about in this? First of all, too, I should have said, I am opposed to this resolution. But could you specifically tell us what threat has been made?
As was pointed out by a few people, the discussion beyond the resolution is out of order. So
no, you've quoted a threat. You stated in this resolution that a threat has been made. I'm taking it directly off of your resolution. So what threat has been made?
I'm sorry, I did not motion or second this resolution to the table, so you can ask the motioner or the second if they would like to discuss it, or anyone who would like to comment on
Who made the motion to discuss this? Mr. Hinchy? Okay, do you know what threat the Wyoming Republican Party specifically made?
Yeah, I'm going to declare this out of order because we're not debating the actual motion at this point. Do you have any comments, questions, or concerns on the resolution itself? That is beyond.
Everyone here needs to understand this resolution. It's extremely important. Every one of these resolutions are. And this body does not know anything about all of three of these details. Information has been withheld. This is a fair question. I would like for you to explain the resolution.
Again, I would love to, but as was stated, that is not on the agenda. I can probably comment more when we get to B&C.
Then you're saying this resolution is not on the agenda, then this resolution needs to be removed then?
I'm sorry, you're asking for my opinion on the resolution.
I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm asking for you to explain this resolution.
Do you have any further questions on the resolution?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay. Again, specifically. How has the Wyoming Republican Party attempted to discourage or hinder your First Amendment rights? And how have they intimidated this county central committee?
Do you have any further questions or comments on the resolution itself?
I have several, and these are on the resolution. They are specifically stated in your resolution.
You keep saying it's my resolution, however, it's been brought to the floor for this body to consider. I am one of the co-signers on the resolution.
Okay, if you're the co-signer, then you should have a clear understanding of a resolution that you put your name on.
Yeah, I do, so.
Okay, well then can you please answer the question?
We know.
It's your time to do point of order and speak up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if the body will allow me to comment and discuss the resolution, I'd be glad to.
Answer the question.
I'm sorry, you're out of order. You've not been recognized.
First Amendment. Answer the question.
Can you please restate your question?
Okay, the first one was specifically, what threat has been made by the Wyoming Republican Party?
I have a point of order.
You're trying to ask him to do something that he cannot do as chairman. I mean, rules are rules, whether you want to hear it or not. I mean, sorry, but he doesn't step down from that chair. He cannot.
Okay, would you please step down from the chair so you may answer, so this body can understand what this resolution means?
No, I'm not willing to step down. We have other people that can discuss this.
If that doesn't show everyone what's going on here, that we cannot get a clear answer.
Do you have any other questions that are not addressed to me specifically on this resolution?
Appeal the decision of the chair about the decision to step down. You can do that. Majority votes and you...
And I've chosen not to.
You ever heard of an appeal is?
Any further comments or questions?
I would like to make a motion to propose to make this, make it indefinitely.
What? Postpone indefinitely?
Postpone indefinitely. Since this body can't even understand what they're voting on, can we postpone this?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and second to postpone item 8A on our agenda indefinitely.
Point of order?
Yes.
We've got a motion on the floor. We have to deal with the motion first?
No.
Then we take up the second motion?
It's a subsidiary.
So please don't speak out of order. We need to recognize individuals before you speak. I'll refer to my parliamentarian who has the final say on the matter.
It is in order.
So the motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman,
What about the motion?
may I ask a point of order?
Yes.
Chairman, the motion set aside is made. It's not to be debated. It was made and seconded. It has to be voted on.
Correct.
So the motion to set aside has been made. It's been decided, made. And there. Well, I may be corrected from the audience, but postpone or set aside are two different things. If she made the motion to set aside, there'd be no debate, we'd have to vote.
Mr. Parliamentarian.
My motion is to postpone indefinitely.
It is debatable and it requires a majority vote. And you can go into the subject.
Correct. Okay, so there's a motion and a second to postpone debate on this. Who is the second on that again? Okay, Joe. Any further discussion on the motion? Not the resolution. We're talking about the motion to end debate. Or sorry, to postpone debate on this particular item.
Matt?
Yes.
2-1 J.R. Reagan's. I would just move it. Let's move on to the next one and we can always reconsider. Is that correct?
No.
Go back to, let's go to the next resolution.
No, we need to vote on this one to postpone it indefinitely.
Any further debate? Yes. Peter.
I do not want to relinquish my spot.
We're debating the motion and that was just made and seconded, so it's discussion on that particular item.
Mr. Chairman, Peter Nicolason, 4-2. I think it's premature to postpone indefinitely. There are people in line. I think that this original motion should be fully debated. This side is suggesting that there's nothing more to be said. I, in particular, have been standing in line to provide additional information, so I think it's premature, and I think that the motion to postpone indefinitely should be denied.
Any further comments on the motion to postpone indefinitely? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of postponing further discussion and debate on number 8A, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. No. Okay. The chair's opinion or the noes have it. Division has been called. If we can have our tower committee come on up. You're gonna. Yes, so we have our report from the committee. We have a total of 132 votes being counted tonight. We have, the majority is at 66 and 2/3 is 88. So we can have our 3 members of our tower committee come on up. 67. 67 is the majority. All right, so what we are voting on, for those who said aye, to this motion, which means to postpone, I'm going to use the correct words, postpone debate on this topic indefinitely. Please rise. If you have one proxy, raise one hand. If you have two proxies, raise two hands. Yes.
Would you repeat your instructions about proxies? How many hands go up?
Yep.
If you stand, you're voting for yourself.
Correct.
If you have one proxy only, you'll one hand up.
That's correct. If it's just your vote, you stand. If you have one additional proxy, you raise one hand. If you have two additional proxies, you raise two hands. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Power committee completed with them. If you can please sit down. Same thing for those who voted no. Please rise. If you're voting for yourself, stand. One proxy, one hand, two proxies, two hands. Tower committee, we have some up front here too.
You did get us.
All right, the ayes have it, the motion fails. We had 69 opposed, 53 for. So now we're moving back to further discussion on the motion that's on the floor, which is the resolution regarding First Amendment rights.
Mr. Chairman, I guess if I have questions, who do I give them to explain this resolution if you cannot answer them?
Yeah, just because you have questions doesn't mean they're going to be answered. This body here can answer them if they like. I cannot, obviously. So if there's any further discussion on the resolution, we'd like to hear them. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next person.
I am completely at a loss as to how we can have someone explain this resolution. If, Peter, you said that you'll be able to answer these questions?
No, I did not. I said I'm ready to speak in opposition to the motion, so I can provide some more information perhaps, but I don't know what the questions are.
Okay, my questions are, and I think that these are questions that everyone in this room should be concerned about. The specifics of this resolution, what threats have been made by the Wyoming Republican Party, how has the Wyoming Republican Party attempted to discourage or hinder our First Amendment rights, and how have they intimidated this Central Committee. And I believe you had in here about a disciplinary committee review. If someone in our leadership in our executive committee and central committee is violating bylaws of our county and they refuse to address those, wouldn't that be reasonable for...
Out of order, that's not related to this resolution.
But you've stated in here that it says disciplinary committee review.
We can't just keep discussing things that are not relative to this resolution. So if there are no points or questions on the resolution, please allow someone else to speak.
Okay, well, I just want everyone to know. I mean, obviously, if you have the resolution in front of you, everything I'm asking is stated on this resolution, and all I'm asking for is understanding and clarification, and just someone to say, explain it. And I will tell you that, in my opinion, that the state party has in no way intimidated the executive committee or the central committee here. I oppose this resolution.
Thank you.
Okay, speaking to the thank you. My name is Linda Bergeron. I'm in precinct 2-8. Speaking in the resolution to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th.
Can you please speak into the mic?
Okay. Speaking to the 5th whereas, or the last whereas, my concern is that the power of our Natrona County Republican Party bylaws in the Powers Clause, which would be, I believe, Article 3, and then Section 3, which is power. The Natrona County Central Committee shall exercise those powers conferred upon it by law and by state and county bylaws. The Natrona County Central Committee is empowered to determine policy, to make rules, to settle disputes, to adopt and amend county bylaws, and to perform all functions necessary to further the interests of the Wyoming Republican Party. So the way I read that, the power to make resolutions is in this body here, the Central Committee. Now, I am not a member of, but I do attend the Executive Committee meetings. When I attend those meetings, I saw resolutions.
You're out of order. We are debating the resolution, not actions of the executive committee or any other organization outside of this. So if you have any further comments on the resolution, you can discuss that now. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next person.
Okay, that is my concern. So I believe that the Wyoming Central Committee, if a violation has occurred, that the Wyoming Central Committee has the right to call.
Sorry, if we could just stay on track on the resolution. So that is off topic. We're debating a resolution on free speech. We're not talking about any bylaw violations. We're not talking about anything specific other than the resolution that's here. So that's off topic.
So my concern is to be resolved. I think that we are trying to insulate against any threat to personal agendas. And I think that our bylaws and the Robert's Rules of Order suggest that what is most important here is the integrity of the party. And so I believe that there is an accountability to keep the power in the Central Committee, and we need to be focused on keeping the power in the Central Committee. And because of that, a person's individual First Amendment rights is crucial and supreme. However, when a body takes that voice and they proclaim that voice for another entity, being the Central Committee, I think that this resolution to be resolved has a problem. And it needs to be researched and spoken to specifically.
All right, thank you.
Doug Bergeron, 2A, and I just ask everybody to bear with me. I'm not an orator. I don't have a very big vocabulary, and when I get in front of one of these, it's really hard to get my thoughts gathered. But I have several objections to this resolution. We have 5 paragraphs describing all the reasons why we have to have this resolution. And then if you read the resolution, it contradicts all the reasons given to have it. In paragraph 1, our founding principles of our nation is freedom of expression and the right to question those in authority. Now, if we oppose that in the resolution, we're contradicting the reasons that we're doing it. We should have the right to question those in authority, not be opposed to that right. If there's a governing body that has disciplinary committee reviews or disciplinary actions, that again goes back up to the right to question those in authority. And if you pass this resolution down here at the bottom, where we embrace the First Amendment rights and oppose the threats to Republicans and through questioning or opinions or the actions that they have done, that limits political speech, and it serves only to protect the powerful and to insulate the incumbent officers if they cannot be held accountable and if there is not transparency. There has to be that questioning and of opinions and actions. And the third problem I have with this is the Wyoming State Republican Party is, in 2 paragraphs here, is described as a governing body. And it is my understanding that the Natrona County Republican Party is independent from the Wyoming State Republican Party. We have our own bylaws and our own resolutions and our own platforms that we operate under, so they are not a governing body. And so that is another problem I have with this. And it just, all the reasons we're giving up above are contradicted in the resolution. And it limits political speech, and it serves to protect the powerful and insulate them. I had other thoughts, but I'm having a hard time getting them together. But so I'll just leave it at that. Everything in the resolution contradicts all the reasons that are given for the resolution.
Thank you.
Kit Jennings, 1-9. Doug, you might not be in order, but you're a smart man. Mr. Chairman, I think what we've missed on the resolution is that, as the previous speaker was pointing out, the resolution is in conflict with itself. We have fought hard in this country to have the right to say anything we want to say. Now, of course, we've been told we can't say fire if the theater's not burning. So we don't. But when it comes to each other, and especially our politicians, many of us get very passionate about our side of the issue. And whether we're a whole bunch of Republicans and we're split on the issue. The problem with this resolution pulls out that we have the freedom to go out and say what's wrong with something, and we can say it as strong as we want to say it, as long as we don't threaten bodily harm and financial distress and all that kind of stuff. But where the resolution, Mr. Chairman, I believe takes that step out of bounds is the other side of the coin. talk about something that somebody else shouldn't say, that's my freedom to say that you should have said it this way instead of the way that you said it, Mr. Chairman. But when we go to limit ourselves and our colleagues and our fellow Republicans on the backside of the speech, then we're just as bad as the ones that are limiting us on the front side. So if you can't stand up and say, that's wrong, believe me, if you've ever been a politician, which Mr. Chairman is experiencing this, you get called some names. You get your ancestors and your family get called some names in those things. But it's something that we've learned, and it's something that's been to court, and it's something that the Supreme Court's ruled on, and I won't give you all kinds of cases. But the bottom line is, when you go to make a rule on the backside of the freedom, you're infringing the freedom. Mr. Chairman, I stood to continue the debate on this, but I think that we should vote this down, and I think it should be very, very quick. I think the intentions here are good to some people. To other people, they're terrible. But you have to look at both sides of the coin. If we have the freedom, the last thing we want to do is restrict that freedom. And that's what we're doing. We outline what we need and how free we are, and then we say, but in this case, if you intimidate, you call me a bad name, you tell me that my ancestors were rotten, that's as bad. Mr. Chairman, I would ask everybody to defeat this. Let's come back. There are valid points that need to be taken up. The reason that this was put together, there was a lot of hard work on it. Let's get rid of these words. Let's sit down and find the words that still give us the freedom that we fought for, that our soldiers still fight for and die for, and come back and do it the right way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Peter Nicolason, 4-2. I didn't intend to come to the microphone this many times tonight, and I fear that there might be a few more. I'll say to the body that these resolutions are important, and here's why. You have 3 individuals in this room that you have elected to represent you at the Wyoming State Central Committee. And we do our best. I do my best. I know Ms. True and Chairman McGinley do their best to represent your interests based on what we understand the desires to be of this body. And when we question the governing body, the authority at the State Central Committee, and then they at our last meeting up in Graybull, a meeting that at least 3 of the opponents to this resolution tonight attended. At the very beginning of that meeting say, we're going to, under Robert's Rules of Order, Chapter 20, open up a special investigative disciplinary committee with the members appointed by the chairman. The targets of the investigation were not identified. The scope was not identified, but it was announced that that occurred. Then it was, then the body went into executive session. And so proceedings from that point forward are confidential, as are the deliberations and the investigation of this disciplinary committee. Clearly, it arose from the questioning of the governing body at the State Central Committee. So if they don't like what's being said, and have an investigative committee with special members appointed start their work in a confidential manner, in a secretive manner that isn't expressed in any way. The procedures are not laid out. There's no right to confront. There's no notice. There's no opportunity to be heard. It is, in my mind, the very act of that a threat or intimidation. So why do these resolutions matter, and why do I stand in support of this? Why is my name at the bottom of this? Because if they don't like what we're saying, they're saying we're not representing you. And what we see coming from other counties of the state are resolutions. And some are great, and some are not, in my view, great. But the State Central Committee pays attention to these resolutions. And I think it sends a strong message in support of your elected 3 to support this and vote for it, so that we tell the State Central Committee that you shouldn't use intimidation and threats just because one of us or more of us may question the governing body and the authority. Okay? So I think that free speech is critical. I appreciate some of the comments made by some of my colleagues, but the bottom line is there's a reason we bring this to you, because we think it's important for your voice to be heard, because they don't think we represent you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Michelle Sabrowski, 8-5. Just ditto to Kit and Doug. And just to reiterate, free speech is for everybody, not just the people we agree with. And unfortunately, you're drawing attention to somebody else's expression of free speech over there. Free speech comes in all shapes and forms, and sometimes we don't agree with it, sometimes it's tasteless, but it doesn't matter, we all have that right. To what Peter said about the executive committee, and especially the top 3 representing us at the State Central Committee, that's absolutely true. The problem is they brought with them to that State Central Committee in Great Bowl resolution with all of our names on it, saying we passed those 3 resolutions as a body. Raise your hand if you are on the Central Committee, not the Executive Committee, and voted on those 3 resolutions.
Please address the chair, not the audience.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, nobody in this room, except for the people in the Executive Committee, had an opportunity to vote on any of these 3, including the one regarding free speech. None of us did, and our name was on it, and that's a violation of my free speech, because my free speech was not, I was not able to exercise it concerning that resolution before my name went on it.
Just a point of order, this is the first time this resolution has been presented anywhere.
Were there was 3 before.
We're discussing the resolution that's on the floor, which is on free speech.
Okay, well, okay, so the other ones, there were still, you violated my free
They're
speech.
on the agenda, and we will come to those.
Yes, it's still a violation of my free speech, and yet we have a resolution here to not violate free speech that contradicts itself and in itself violates free speech.
Okay, I'm not quite following you, but I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Okay, well, it's the resolution about free speech contradicts itself because in and of itself, it's violating the expression of free speech, because it's basically saying we all can say what we want as long as the majority agrees with us. Okay? The point is also that this resolution is being considered along with 2 more that actually violated my free speech and everybody else's free speech in this room, because our name was put on a document that we never had a voice on. 2 documents, 3 documents, and our voice was never, we didn't get a voice, and our names were put to it, which seems to me actually probably illegal, if anything. So I just...
You're out of order now, you're making false accusations.
Was the Natrona County Republican Party's name on the resolutions that were provided to the Central Committee that met in Graybull?
So if there were resolutions that were officially presented and debated at the State Central Committee, I'd like to see that as the matter of the minutes, because I recall at this meeting,
They
you
did
can
not
check
get,
with our
were they
committee
submitted?
members, they were not presented to
Were they submitted by
committee.
email?
They were not brought to the floor to the committee.
Were they submitted
They
to
were not
email to the
presented.
committee for consideration before the investigative
So
committee
you're
shut
out
it
of
down?
order. We're back on the original motion. Any further comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Larry Harrington, 3-5. I'm here to speak against the resolution. I hate to do that because it sounds like I'm speaking against the First Amendment and free speech. But I think it's a fuzzy resolution. I don't understand, I'm a lawyer, I don't understand the discussion of the constitutional law in it. However, I think if our Natrona County Republicans have a complaint with the state committee, they ought to specifically say what it is. Because I think a lot of us are trying to read between the lines and figure out just what happened here. And I don't understand, and I have trouble voting for a resolution with inadequate whereases that don't explain the resolution itself.
Okay, thank you. So if the body can please respect the proceedings and not applause after comments.
Call for the question.
Question has been called. All right, the question has been called. We are going to end debate if the body so chooses. All those in favor of ending debate and moving on to the question, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. No. Chair's opinion, the ayes have it. Debate has been ended. Thank you very much. Mr. Parliamentarian.
It's two-thirds vote. The chairman can determine a two-thirds vote by voice, but you can call for division.
Okay, division has been called. If we can have the teller committee come back up. So what you're voting on, if you vote aye, that means you want to end debate and move to voting on the resolution itself. So if you're voting aye to end debate and move to the vote on the resolution, please stand. If you're voting for yourself, just you stand. If you're carrying a proxy, one hand. Carrying two proxies, two hands. Please be seated. If we can have those voting no, please stand. All right, please be seated. The vote count was 86 in favor of ending debate, 39 against. That is two-thirds. The ayes have it. Debate has been ended. We are now moving on. But that's two-thirds of those voting, so 86 to 39.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Parliamentarian, is that based on those voting or?
It's a two-thirds vote of those voting, not for the president.
Okay. All right, 86 to 39, debate has been ended. We're going to move to vote. Sorry, Ms. Thomas, if we could.
That was rude, thank you.
Sorry, that was really hard to do. I really do apologize. Okay, so now we're moving to, debate has been ended. We're now moving to vote on the resolution on free speech as presented. All those in favor of accepting this resolution, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? No. Okay, the chair is unclear. We're going to tell our committee again. So all those in favor of the resolution, please stand. Please be seated. Those against the resolution, please stand. Okay, please be seated. All right, that was a close one. The ayes have it, 61 to 60. Resolution passes. Thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda, Wyoming Republican Party Governance Review and Feedback Committee update and resolution. So I'll begin with a quick update since that is on the agenda. We have the chairman of the committee in the back of the room, Brian Miller from Sheridan County. We debated this topic at our executive committee meeting 2 months ago. There were a lot of rumors floating around on what this committee was, what it did, both negative and positive as far as the function of this committee. We had some debate and discussion, and a position statement was passed on that. To be fair to the committee and the state party, I reached out to Chairman Miller to have him come in and hear from the chairman of the committee itself. That information was passed out to everyone in this room. It was part of the executive committee meeting minutes as far as the function of this committee and what the expected results are. From that material, this committee functioned with 11 individuals. 15 were invited and 11 participated on this committee. The goal of the committee, as stated, was to review bills that were passed through the legislature in this past session, evaluate those bills based on the Wyoming Republican Party platforms, as well as position statements from the state party, and the legislative agenda priority items. So a total of 26 items were placed to review by this committee. From that, they reviewed, I believe, 174 bills. Again, it's in your notes, but I think it's approximately that. And the goal of the committee was to come up with a grade on the bills related to the work that they had done. Now, from that, I think this is where a little bit of the challenge came, and again, Brian was gracious enough to help discuss this. The committee itself is not grading legislators at the state party. I know that's something people thought was happening, but it's not. So they're going to pass out the grades on the legislation, as well as the votes how the legislators voted on each of these bills. That information would then be distributed to each county and each county chairman. And from that point, from the work itself, I would get a county rating, and each county central committee would rate their elected officials based on this information. Now, the other piece in here is there's core committee members that will review this moving forward. They'll look at election platforms and promises made by candidates, and then compare that to, I assume, from this information on these bills. But again, that was the information that we were provided. Just to be clear, the Wyoming Republican Party has 19 platforms that would approved by the state party. We have 59 platforms in our platforms, and I also printed out the national GOP platforms, which is 66 pages. So those are the 3 versions of the platforms, and they are not created equal. We as a party, again, for facts on this, at our last county convention, I actually put forth the state party platforms to be adopted by us as our own county platforms for consistency, and that was actually voted down at our county convention. So at that point, the larger version of this governing body said no to adopting the state party platforms at that time. The committee discussed and reaffirmed their opinion on this matter, and therefore you do have the platform that's in front of you, the resolution that's in front of you today. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to move this resolution to the floor for debate and discussion.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Anderson, 1-9, I move the motion.
Is there a second?
Second, Penny Sanders.
Okay. So the resolution has been moved and seconded. I'm going to read it. Resolution from the Natrona County Republican Party to the Wyoming State Republican Party, whereas the 10th platform of the Wyoming Republican Party states that the most effective, responsible, and responsive government is government that is closest to the people, government that governs least, governs best. Whereas the Wyoming State Republican Party has, without consideration of local county parties or individual Republicans, created a governance review and feedback committee with members selected through an undefined process and without publicly disclosing all participants and governing guidelines. Whereas Article 3, Section 42 of the Wyoming Constitution specifically prohibits any member of the legislature give his vote or influence in favor of or against any other measure or proposition pending or proposed to be introduced into such legislature, and that the mechanics of requiring Republican legislators to submit proposed legislation to the Governance Committee for approval and redrafting with members of the Wyoming legislature secretly appointed and members of the committee, it is on its face unconstitutional and creates an unacceptable conflict of interest. Whereas the actions of the Governance Review and Feedback Committee consolidate power with the secretly appointed 12 members, I believe that should be 11, but 12 members to grade proposed and enacted legislation, and such activity will reduce the voice of the voters and their chosen representatives and senators in the state at large, which is the very thing that the Republican Party stands against, central consolidation of power by the few and answerable to none. Be it resolved that the Natrona County Republican Party is opposed to the formation of and activity of the Governance Review and Feedback Committee. Okay, that resolution is now open for debate and discussion. Yes, sorry, Senator Landry.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Landon 3-6. I just had maybe a suggestion, and perhaps we could make it a motion. Given the fact that we had to limit debate on the previous resolution, I wondered if we might not consider a 2 or 3 minute limit so that more people can get to the microphone tonight. So I would just simply suggest that it's something to think about. Because I know a lot of folks would like to get to the microphone.
Sorry, Senator, that would need to be a motion, so you can make a motion to such effect.
I would so move that we put a 3-minute limit on so that more people can get to the microphone.
Some motion is seconded. That is not debatable. That's 2/3. That does require a 2/3 majority. So all those in favor of opposing a 3-minute time limit on all further debate, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say no.
No. 2/3.
Okay, it's been point of order. We need to stand again. Teller committee, you are getting your work tonight. So all those in favor of imposing a 3-minute time limit, please rise. Imposing. Sorry. If you would like the 3-minute time limit, please stand up.
Limiting debate.
Yeah, we are voting on limiting debate to 3 minutes for the remainder of the meeting. per speaker. All right, please be seated. All those against limiting debate to 3 minutes moving forward. All right, please be seated. The ayes have it, 90 to 30. We're going to be limiting debate to 3 minutes. At this point, I'll need to appoint a timekeeper. Is it a point of order?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, as you announced and described the bill, I'm sorry to point this out, but the bill, the motion and the second did not include a per person or per time. There's a 3-minute limit on the debates. And you add it right at the end there per person. I'm not going to try to make a motion that is out of order or anything, but I just think that it should be pointed out that may persuade a vote or two, and it's been limited anyway.
Okay, the person who made the initial motion, can you please clarify what you meant by 3 minutes? 3 minutes in total, 3 minutes per person? What we already voted on. No objections were made prior to the vote, so I'm going to consider that in order. At this point, I'll need to appoint a timekeeper moving forward. Do we have any other guests in this room who are not voting on this side over here that can serve as a timekeeper? Representative Gray, come on up. Thank you very much. So it's going to be 3 minutes of debate per person. The timekeeper is Chuck Gray up front. As soon as you begin speaking, your time will start. And Chuck, if you can give them a 30-second warning, just raise your hand when there's 30 seconds, and let me know when time is up, please. Oh, there you go. Look at that. Cooperation in the house. All right. Yes. So now we're on discussion of the resolution that was moved to the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Bob, I, 12-2. On this resolution, I'm speaking against this resolution. I think what this State Central Committee is trying to do here is really important to the Republican Party. I'd like to comment first on this resolution. You know, the letter went out, and the chair took a position on this, on all three of these resolutions, as a matter of fact, in his letter, where he should be neutral. But on the bottom of the resolution, it also says that it's approved. We got approved by the Natrona County Republican Party Central Committee. And that was 3 days ago, and it's dated today. So it looks like this resolution has already been passed by what was sent out to everybody in the body. Technicality, but I think it's important that, you know, I don't think it's been approved yet, so I don't think it should have been written on the resolution that way. You know, this governance review is you know, something, you know, this body is a Republican Party. It's not the Democratic Party. You know, your letter also stated that, you know, we believe in small limited government. You know, if we believe in small limited government, wouldn't we want to review and grade the legislation that is coming through, you know, the state house down there? You know, don't we want to guard against big government, tax increases, you know, overspending in the education sector at twice per student what some of our neighbors are? You know, the Natrona County leadership here in Natrona County boasts of our sweep of electing Republicans to every district in our county. To me, having an R next to your name doesn't really make you a Republican. You know, if you don't agree with the majority of the values of our platforms, you know, it's effectively you just have an R next to your name, and you know, we need to hold people accountable for that. You know, and what about all of the work that goes through every state convention, everybody that goes down there to work hard on platforms and resolutions, and you know, get those passed so we know what we stand for. You know, that's what this Republican Party is about. It's about values and principles, and we work hard to try to obtain those through state conventions with a lot of hard work from people. I've been on a couple of those committees myself. You know, and one thing, I'll get off my soapbox here, you know, we have self-avowed moderates in our party, and I just never understand when they describe themselves as moderates. I mean, do we have anything in our platforms that describe a moderate? Does that mean you're faithful to the party values and resolutions and platforms?
Time's up.
Thank you.
Just as a point of clarification, this document is not signed. This is the format that we would use if submitted to the party. So we would have the representatives of our county as well as the date and time of the meeting. So this document is not signed, meaning not approved yet because we did not vote on it. That's formatting.
Mr. Chairman, Michelle Sabrowski, 8-5. I understand that the selection process for the Governance Review and Feedback Committee was the same as all of them on the State Central Committee. And I also understand that you were, at the inception, that you were on that committee. What I don't know is if you were appointed or if you volunteered. I know I'm not going to get an answer out of you, these are my questions. And so if you were on that committee, I don't know why you're saying that you did not know what was going on in that committee. And feedback would be the operative word there. If you were given the opportunity for feedback, did you do that? So there was nothing secret about the committee because the committee brought everything to the State Central Committee, and any member had the right to attend the Governance Review Committee meetings at any time because they're regular committee meetings, and I don't know if you attended any of those, either as an observer or as a member of that committee. And I also heard that there was a possibility that there was Governance Review and Feedback Committee stuff addressed on the State Central Committee phone calls. So I don't know if you were in on those phone calls. There were also things voted on that were suggested by the Governance Review Committee at the Cheyenne meeting in January. But you weren't there, you were there by proxy. And so I don't think you were able to participate in that discussion and vote on those items. The other thing I'm concerned about is the second paragraph. And what I want to get back to, though, before I address your second paragraph in the resolution, is you brought up that you felt like we weren't being represented as a county by the state, by the Governance Review Committee because of our platforms. There's a varying difference in it, and ours and the Wyoming and the national platforms. I would point to what a republic is. And a republic starts at the grassroots and works its way up to grander and grander things. And I would say that our platforms would probably directly affect our county commissioners, our county elected offices, the Republicans elected to those offices. The Wyoming Republican Party platforms would apply across the board to people voting on things that affect our state. And so we might have representatives from Natrona County in the legislature, but the votes that they cast affect the entire state. The things that Governor Gordon does affect the entire state. That is where the Wyoming Republican platforms would come into play. And for our U.S. delegation, they would apply, those national platforms would apply to our U.S. delegation. Does that make sense? That's how a republic works. So that's my issue, and as far as the second paragraph goes, I feel like you guys violated that when you submitted these resolutions to the state, put our name on it, and you submitted it, and thank the Lord that they never got addressed at the State Central Committee in Grable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again. For a point of clarification, this resolution, as written, was not presented at the state party. This is the first time it's been presented to anybody.
J.R. Riggins, 2-1. One of the things I'd like to address, it's hard to get answers about specifics of this review bill and the resolution, but there are some things in here I do know about because I served on the state committee for 3 years with Joe on part of those years, and this has been underway for a long time. Matter of fact, it says right here in this resolution, without consideration of the local counterparties or individual Republicans, well, that's complete prop. Some of this stuff came directly from other county parties. So this discussion is 2.5 years old. So that is not true that's put in this resolution. We had every opportunity at this county to discuss this. It could have been brought up a year ago. Matter of fact, I was actually pretty excited. I thought this is a tool we could use. People, naturally legislators are scared they're going to get a bad ranking or however it's going to be done. I never thought it would be used. I don't think they would ever point out legislators they don't disagree with. Maybe highlight ones that may be super performers. But I don't believe any of this is true, that the mechanics are requiring a Republican legislator to submit it before that. Before that, I don't believe that at all. And if you want answers to those questions, that man right back there can answer that. But we never got an opportunity for him to come forward and maybe have some specific answers about this. So I oppose this completely. It's a work in progress. I don't even know if it's completely finalized yet. Peter Nicolason can answer that question for us. So there's a lot of work into this. I don't think this is a bad deal. Don't we have a right, doesn't the Republican Party have a right to encourage Republicans to support or not support bills that are coming before it? I think they do.
Thank you.
Linda Bergeron, Precinct 2-8. I rise to oppose this resolution. Second paragraph, where it says without consideration, I think that JR just addressed that. I think there's been great consideration over the years. In actuality, it is the consideration for the county parties and individual Republicans. In Robert's Rules of Order, parliamentary law is the basis of all constitutional government, and protecting and practicing correct parliamentary procedure, we also protect our democratic institutions. Parliamentary procedure protects the rights of the people to join together to accomplish common goals and enable them to debate and take action in a fair manner with the least amount of controversy. The rules of the parliamentary process are based on common sense and logic, and they have evolved throughout centuries of usage and custom. Parliamentary rules protect the right of the majority to decide, the right of the minority to be heard, the right of individual members, and the right of absentees. And going further in paragraph 2, I believe it is defined according to Brian Miller, the speech that he came and gave to the executive committee. I think it is very clearly defined that the purpose is protecting the bylaws and the platform of the county, which people donate their time, their talents, and their study to presenting good platforms and resolutions. Upholding the bylaws of the Republican Party and the platform of the party is required by the officers as addressed in Robert's Rules of Order. I submit that accountability to the Central Committee and the members of the Republican Party gathered under our representative form of government is being protected here. And I stand for that governance review and feedback committee. And I think it is appropriate to hear a motion to table the resolution until the Central Committee has the opportunity to hear Brian Miller's presentation of the Governance Review and Feedback Committee, so they're aware.
Time's up. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Redfield, Ward 2. I do kind of hope maybe the possibility that the committee chairman.
Yes. No, there was not a motion made. Please continue.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Redfield, Ward 2. I do kind of would hope that maybe the committee chairman might have an opportunity to answer some questions, because I do have a number of questions about this resolution. But I rise in opposition to this resolution. And, you know, folks, my service to you in the legislature was a great honor. And I did my very best to defend your Republican values, the things that you voted on for in your party platforms. And this was a high priority to me, and it's also a high priority to our state leaders. If you've ever wondered why our state government, with our supermajority, sometimes fails to represent our values, look at the bills before our legislature and track them through for yourselves. You get an idea. There's a problem. The state party does comply with our bylaws. They're not attacking our legislators. They are still our party, and they are working for both you and I. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Kathy Ide. If you would allow, I would like to turn my time allotment over to the actual chairman of the Governance Review and Feedback Committee, Brian Miller. Nobody knows the topic better than him. And so if I would like to give my time to him.
Okay, your time has already started, but yes.
So I'll start from back here then. What I have to say right off the bat is not hardly anything that is in this resolution is true. When it comes down to the quotes that you made,
Those were not made by me, so please do not direct those to me.
You made the meeting minutes. Anyway, here's what it comes down to. The Governance Review and Feedback Committee. The title says it all. It's Governance Review, looking at the legislation that is put out there and comparing it to 26 objective standards that we, the party, have. If you look at the 19 platforms that I keep hearing are, well, that's the states, it's not us. 30,000 people across this state have had the opportunity, at a minimum, to input to those platforms. 30,000. There's not a single legislator in this room that has 30,000 people in their district voting for them. So it really irks me that people keep coming back and saying that these platforms mean nothing. 30,000 people have touched them. 600 at state convention, okay? And hundreds more at county convention. Precinct caucuses in the precincts before that. So that's wrong. Everything that is written in this particular document is wrong. I've actually provided it, and actually I'll provide it to the press as well, of what's really out there. We saw in the last meeting that there was a lot of, I'll just say lies and mendacity is really what's been going on with this thing, okay? But when it comes down to it, and you can cut me off whenever you want, but the bottom line is this. We provide feedback to legislators. Legislators provide feedback to us. We are trying to open the door between us and the legislators. 22 legislators actually participated, came and asked us to review bills after the session has happened, and asked us what kind of amendments could be made to bills that were already there. We do not require any bills to come through us until they go through the LSO. Once they're out for the public, that's when we get them on the committee. The committee is publicly named. There are no secret meetings. And the statement that talks about the legislators having a problem because of the state law that says that they can't have input, that's moot. The legislators don't even come into play until 6 months after the session. They look at the work that the committee did, and they give us inputs as to whether or not we should actually look at certain bills. Because there's things behind, there's things behind the scenes that we don't know.
Time's up, please. Turn over the mic.
Let him talk, come on. Tell the truth. First round 2-8, I want to donate my time to him also.
So bottom line, I can go bottom line. I really just like to answer questions because so much has been said about this committee that is absolutely wrong. There was one story put out during the session. Okay, just so everyone knows, this was passed as part of the campaign plan for the Republican Party in November of 2017. Yours truly voted for it.
Yeah, please do not direct comments to individuals in the room. That's out of order.
All right. All of the campaign plan, this portion of the campaign plan was pulled out, voted on separately, because several legislators had issues with certain ways we looked at it. They didn't want us to use ratings from other organizations, the NRA, abortion groups, all that stuff. They didn't want us to use that. I didn't want to use that. I wanted to use something that is ours. We don't use other organizations' data. We use our own data. We use our own 26 objective standards. We have 15 people on this committee. Okay? One of those members is in this room, never showed, not for a single committee. A founding member, volunteered for it. I got the email if you want to see it. I have spent so much time coming down to talk to the executive committee, putting together things for this committee, because one of the members in this room who never showed up to the meeting had no idea what was going on. Okay? At that November 2017 meeting, it ended up being a unanimous decision by the entire state central committee. Unanimous. That includes many legislators who were in the room, because many legislators are on the state central committee, who agreed that if we had our own objective standards, this could work. This could work well to create a bridge between us and our legislators on a year-round basis.
Point of information. Speaker.
Yes. Go ahead.
Recognized.
Yes, you're recognized. Is this a point of order?
Point of order. Point of information.
Okay.
Question. The speaker previously stated that the members of the GRFC were listed or printed or whatever. Can the speaker address the phrase in the fourth paragraph, secretly appointed?
Sure.
Explain where that
I don't know where the secretly appointed came from. There are 2 members from every district. We're broken into 7 districts across the state. 2 members from every district plus 1, because 1 district has 4, are a member of that group. Okay? Every county ends up being a part of the GRFC. In fact, that we end up needing people at the beginning, which we haven't even done the first part. We didn't get started until the legislative session. There's 3 parts to this thing. There's the self-assessment part. I know certain people in the room have a problem with the word self-assessment. But when someone says they're going to do A, B, and C, and they're going to vote X, Y, and Z, and they go down to the Senate or the House, and they do D, E, and F, and L, M, N, O, P, that's a self-assessment. I don't have to make that call. That's done by them. Okay? That's their own thing. That's a part of it. The other part is the legislative piece. The way it works is we are looking at the legislation, and we're not grading it per se. We're deciding whether or not we support it or not. And we do support with priority, support, who cares? Who cares who in general, why does the party care who the state mammal is or the state amphibian? And then oppose or oppose with priority.
Thank you very much. Your time's up.
Kim DeVore from 1-4, and let me just start by saying I am a self-avowed moderate, and I'm proud of it, and I think there's a lot more in this state, and in this room, and in this county than anyone would like to recognize. So we do have a voice, and if you honestly believe that every person in this room, or every person in the Natrona County Republican Party 100% supports every aspect of the platform, you're incorrect. And it would be silly for any leader to ever assume that. So my personal feeling is I'm in favor of this resolution because we have enough politics in politics right now. When I elect my elected officials, I want you to take my voice and vote. And I want you to pass things that impact my family. I do not want you to care about whether you're going to get elected again, or what your grade is going to be, or what your score is going to be. And also, on the flip side of that, please do not assume or underestimate my ability to make my own decision on whether I want to re-elect someone and if they represent my platform and how I feel. And I want my...
Sorry, could I pause the time for a minute?
Yeah.
Can we please terminate the conversations at the end of that line? We can hear it up here. It is distracting and disrespectful to the speaker. Please continue.
The next part is, you guys, we're not going to be here forever. We're going to turn this over to another generation. My adult children are in that generation. Do not underestimate them. Do not assume that it's your role to educate them, or that it is our party's role to tell them who is right to represent them and who is not. My children are intelligent, and they can make that decision for themselves, and I want them to make that decision for myself. So, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Perkins.
Thank you. Drew Perkins, Precinct 111. I'm also a state senator and also president of the Wyoming Senate. First of all, my comments would be in regard to this. First of all, I am not a party officer. I'm an elected official from Natrona County. I represent Natrona County, and particularly Senate District 29. I take an oath to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Wyoming. I do not take an oath to the Republican Party. The last I checked, the Republican Party is simply, the Republican Party, to be a member of the Republican Party, all you have to do is go down and sign out an application or fill out the party declaration at the county clerk's office. There are no requirements to be a Republican. As far as a party, I have no problem with accountability. You can look at my votes. Every vote I make is reported publicly on the website. It goes out across many things. I can tell you I've been rated by many organizations over time. And I become actually alarmed when my voting record becomes too aligned with any given special interest group. Because nobody owns my vote. I vote based on my conscience, on what I believe the law does with respect to and I do try and follow the party platform when it meets the party platform and I think it's the right thing to do and the right way to do it, then it gets my vote. But there are lots of times when we have a bill that comes up that would be generally moving the party platform forward, but it doesn't do it the right way. We can reduce the budget. We can simply tax your IRA every year. We can reduce the deficit that way, but that's not what we do. So how do you, when you go back and do this, the other thing that happens with legislators is we do this in real time. The bill can be amended approximately 9 times between the time it's introduced for consideration and signed to a committee and when it passes, and actually when it's finally finished, because it actually has to go through the joint committees to resolve differences between the House and the Senate. So a bill can change. And we're required to do that in real time. Well, a lot of times we don't have but 5 minutes or 10 minutes to understand the difference between a vote and the debate and the amendment that can radically change a bill at any given time. So you can analyze this if we want, but I refuse to take oaths of allegiance to any special interest group. And my concern with what we're doing here is this will turn the Republican Party into simply another special interest group. It's another lobbying group. I invited the state chairman to come and speak to our caucus last year, our Republican, our Senate caucus. The Speaker did his House caucus. But if it becomes a lobbying organization, I don't know how I can do that anymore. I'm afraid that if the party becomes a lobbying organization, it will be able to do the exact opposite of what is being proposed, which is open the dialogue between the Senate, between the legislature, and the party, because it becomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Lynn Lockhart, 1-5. My issue is the committee. If there's supposed to be 2 from every county, is 11 that we have on our pages the wrong number. That's my issue.
Thank you. Short and sweet, Mike.
Tyler Phillips, 8-4. So as a younger individual, this resolution is mainly why I got involved, and a lot of concerns.
Sorry to interrupt. Can we terminate the conversations there in the back? Thank you. Please go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
A lot of the concerns I get from talking to fellow coworkers, fellow citizens, I've been a citizen of this great state my whole life, is we continue to vote for Republicans who claim to stand for the platform, but then we get a Democrat bill passed, and one that keeps driving our state into more debt, keeps building on more regulations, more laws, more government. And this governance review is one thing that I think we do need in our state, that we need when bills come up that help people to have an idea of where it stands with their values and with the platform. Because a lot of people get misinformation from the media in support of it, and they assume that, because the media, some Republicans said it was a good thing, that it must be good. And not everyone has time to read every bill. That's why we elect representatives to represent a platform that we believe in, that we stand for. I often talk with my girls about the debt, about the problems facing our state, and I fear for my children, our generations to come, with the growing debt, not just in our state, but in our country. And it's one thing that I voted for a lot of Republicans, and they have not stood by the platform for limited government, for limited spending, and that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Yes.
Lynn Lockhart, 1-5, I was correct. It's two for every district and not every county. I thought 48 is an awfully big committee. However, I think, I don't know whether I can say this or not, but some of the monies that have been spent, I would not agree with. And I'll have that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Peter Nicolason, 4-2. I think Senator Perkins' comments were spot on. I believe that the Wyoming Republican Party should support elected Republicans. I don't think it should be a lobbying organization, which is what it's starting to do. When we hear some of the speakers say, we need to guard against, we need to hold accountable, well, whose job is that? Whose job is it to hold the Natrona County elected officials accountable? And I think it's the citizens of Natrona County, not a small group of individuals appointed by this governance committee. We don't need the Republican Party to act as a lobbying organization. We don't need them to be grading bills for our legislators. Thank you.
Thank you.
Point of information.
Yes.
We don't have any debt, but we have, according to the last session, a $900 million structural deficit.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Jenny, Mr. Chairman, Kid Jennings, 1-9. Mr. Chairman, I think we've heard a lot of pretty solid information on both sides of this resolution. But my concern on this resolution is that you're our representatives that go to the state level. You don't need this. You don't need us doing a resolution for you to take to represent us, to say, here, look, they all agree with us. As long as we continue to vote you in, I know I got voted out, so evidently I was not taking the word to Cheyenne, so it happens to anybody that gets elected. And so as long as you're voted in, you're our representative. You don't need this. If you go and you say, this is wrong at the state level, and you can convince them that it's wrong and the reasons it's wrong, then you've done your job. You don't have to come back to us, Mr. Chairman, and ask us to all of us approve this so that you can take it as one more thing. And Mr. Chairman, the second part of this is the reason I think that we should defeat this, is because this, in my opinion, this is an attempt to lobby the state convention. And we choose delegates to go down there and take the message. And as we've talked on the earlier issue, they go down there and they do the rules, they make the bylaws changes. This is a way to tell them, well, everybody in Natrona County, because we are the largest, well, that's in the next one, we are the largest group of Republicans in one county. We don't need that. We don't need to lobby them. We'll pick those guys to take the message that we want, just like we pick you and your team to take the message with us. So, Mr. Chairman, I would hope you would vote no on this, well, if you could, because you don't need it. As long as we elect you, that's all you need to carry our voice because you're our representative.
Thank you. Just a point of information. Does anyone else have a timer or phone or a timekeeper to use? Back? We're out of Just a quick point of information, we're the second largest. We're gonna not quite yet. Mr. Timekeeper, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay.
I only need 15 seconds or so. Our legislature adopted the Cowboy Code of Ethics a few years back, and in that it says ride for the brand. And so if you're going to get elected under the Republican brand, you should probably ride for that brand. If you were a driver for Coca-Cola and you wore Coca-Cola's jersey and had Coca-Cola's truck that were delivering Pepsi, that's a lie. Okay, so they voted, the legislature did, to ride for the brand. The Democrats ride for theirs. The Republicans should ride for the Republican brand as well, if that's what they're getting elected on. If they don't want to ride for that brand, they should run as an independent, Constitution Party, Libertarian, or whatever they want to run as that fits what they're representing, and that's what I think we need to keep in mind, that our legislature themselves, many in this room voted to adopt the Cowboy Code of Ethics, and I think we need to remember that.
Thank you. Any further debate? Okay. Seeing none, oh yes. Yes, you got in at the time there. I'm not going to cut you off. I dare not do that again.
Mr. Chairman, Susan Thomas, 3-6. The voters decide whether the elected officials are doing their job. That's pretty simple. We do not need a committee of kingmakers or whatever they are to decide if somebody is doing their job. The voters get to decide, and that's where the power is. And nobody, well, I am not a straight party line person. There are some things I switch on, and don't kick me out because I'm just not, that's not who I am. So, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? Sherry, are you coming up?
Sherry Lewis, 2-2. Okay, my question is, since this was approved by the executive committee and written that all the Republican Party and the executive committee agreed.
Sorry, point of order, this resolution was not approved by anyone. This is the first time this resolution has been presented.
That's right?
That is correct.
Well, then what did we hear at the executive committee?
Not this resolution. question has been called. Any further debate, so we don't have to vote on the question? All right. So all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no? No. Okay, division again. All those in favor of the resolution, please rise. Same format as before. Seated. All those opposed, please rise. Okay, please be seated. All right, the motion passes 67 to 55. Thank you very much.
I move for a roll call vote.
Second.
Board officials,
All right, we have a parliamentary question on recognizing them. Okay, so parliamentary rule that is a motion and needs a second, requires a majority vote to actually go to roll call. Okay, so there's a motion and a second to go to a roll call vote. All those in favor of going to a roll call vote, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The noes have it.
Of course. Of course.
Did someone say division? No? Okay. That's why he's sitting over there. All right, so the original motion on the resolution passes 67 to 55. Okay, item 8C on the agenda, Wyoming Republican Party update and resolution on national delegates. So this, as far as the update, came about at a Central Committee meeting earlier in the summer, where the chairman and National Committee women discussed a plan to change the process of selecting national delegates to National Convention. Right now, this is clearly defined in the state party bylaws, and what was being proposed for discussion was a pathway where each county would get one delegate and one alternate. Those would be chosen at county convention by each county individually, and then that slate would be presented for approval at the state convention. This drew some concern from the larger counties because essentially this would asymmetrically guarantee representation to fewer registered Republicans. And questions on why this came about, what was stated in email from the National Committee woman was that we've had a waiver on this process from the Republican Party for 20 years, and that we were in violation of a rule, and that's why this needed to get changed, otherwise we could not sit delegates. We subsequently asked for a copy of the waiver, and there is no such waiver, and there never has been. Granted, there's been no threats from the national GOP on our delegates or the process of how we do it. Furthermore, it was brought to the attention that this item came up as a bylaw change at the last state convention and failed at that time. So it was discussed and debated, and as far as we could tell, this discussion has been tabled at the state party to the state convention. That was mentioned, although not formally voted on or put into policy. That is the evolution of what we are looking at and talking about today. And there is a resolution in front of you that addresses this issue in particular. So again, if we can have someone from the body motion and second to bring this to the floor.
Jill Landon, 3-6, move to bring it to the floor.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Jim Anderson, 1-9.
Thank you. Sorry, I beat you to it. Okay, so this resolution is now brought to the floor. Any debate on the resolution? Again, 3-minute time limit on debate.
Mr. Chairman, JR, Riggins 2-1. You know, I think this effort is a direct result of the 2016 caucus disaster that happened right in this building. Now, I don't know, I think this alternate selection sucks. So every year, maybe on one-off chance year, you get a delegate from this county, next time you get a delegate at Albany County. I mean, if that's the type of selection process you want, then, you know, that's what you're going to be stuck with if we don't work on this. There's a lot of timing rules regarding national convention when this got to be brought forward and all that. But our ability for people, the Republicans, to vote for a presidential candidate and actually have it mean something is worthless right now. And that's not going to improve if we don't keep trying to find ways to get that better. And you know what? Thousands of people came down here and left saying they'll never come back. And that's not going to change it if we don't change things.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Michelle Sobrowski, 8-5. Some of the things in this resolution, but also what you just said to kind of introduce the resolution to this body, are the exact talking points of the Democrat Party against the Electoral College. The same argument they had at the Constitution Convention when they wanted the larger states to have a bigger voice than the smaller states. Now, if you wanted to be fair, this resolution should be something to propose to the state on a fair way to have the delegate selection process, maybe based on representation in the Wyoming House. Right? How many representatives you get will determine somehow how many delegates you get and how many alternates you get per county. That would be a fair way. But to say that we're more important because we have a higher population is absolute crap, and that's the same thing that California says when they point out that Wyoming doesn't even meet the minimum requirement to have representation in Congress. Our electoral votes are supposed to be based on per million, and we don't have that. That is what the states like California with 55 votes say that we're unjustly proportioned because Wyoming shouldn't even have 3 because we don't even have 1 million people. So we need to quit making the Democrats' arguments for them. Thank you.
And just as a point of information, what was being discussed is the mechanics of proposing this, and the proper way of doing that is at state convention where it failed last time. So we're not debating the topic or the process, but the mechanics by which this is changed, which is at state convention.
Mr. Chairman, Kathy, I 12-2. Actually, I agree, and that was the point that I was going to make. I'm in favor of this resolution, even though I think it's insinuating, you're trying to, whoever drafted it, is trying to insinuate that the state party is operating outside of the bylaws, and that is certainly not the case. The part that you said outside of the official process, the state party has no intentions of working outside of the official process. And as you said, the delegate process, or the delegate selection process is a totally separate issue. So I rise in support of this resolution.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Brechtel, 4-2. I'd like to defer my time to the chairman of the committee, if you would please.
Chairman of the committee on what?
Brian Miller.
I'm sorry, he's not related to this particular topic.
In that fashion, then, Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this resolution. Thank you.
Any further debate? Okay, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of accepting this resolution, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No? No. Okay, the ayes have it. Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay, next item is, again, just for update, we've sent out the minutes from the last 2 executive committee meetings. The most recent one, August 20th, has not been approved. Those are draft minutes, not final minutes. So those will be reviewed and voted on at the next executive committee meeting. And again, this is for purposes of transparency, making sure that we include everyone in the discussions that occur at the executive committee level. Our meetings are open to the public. They're open to any of you to attend. The dates are listed down below. At the last meeting, we had, I think, 50 or 60 people in attendance, and the one before that, 40 to 50 people in attendance. So it's great to see that discussion and debate. It's great to have that open. We've had the media present with us at all of our meetings, and I believe here tonight as well, we have members of the media. This is an open public meeting. So they are more than welcome to attend, just like any other individual to an open public meeting. I would encourage you to attend. One thing I do want to highlight in the draft minutes from August 20th is the comments from each of our executive committee members on what we would like to do to help guide and direct the party. Now again, this is up to you, the voting body, when we come up with very specific policies and positions and directions, but it'll give you a flavor of the executive committee, it'll give you a flavor of those that are participating and representing you. So please take a look at those comments from each person, each individual on the executive committee. If you agree with them, great. As we come out with different ideas and processes, I'd like for you to participate and support. If you disagree, please let us know. We don't want to misrepresent this group. We don't want to misrepresent this body. We're here to serve you as the elected members and elected officers in this party. So just a point of information on the minutes, those are there for your review. Again, the caveat, the August 20th is draft minutes. That has not been edited and finalized quite yet. Okay, moving on to the next item of business, fundraising, recruitment, and upcoming events. If I can ask the chair of our fundraising committee, come on up. Annie? Everyone saw the budget. We obviously need to raise funds. Our goal is to support every Republican on the ballot that has a competitor in our county. So fundraising is going to be a key effort. And I'm going to turn it over to our fundraising committee chair, Annie Sanders, for an update.
The committee has not actually met yet. We know that we're going to have a Lincoln Day dinner March 22nd, February 22nd. So that we'll start planning that probably soon. What else am I missing?
That was it, keep it short. February 22nd, Lincoln Day dinner. If you would like to help, get a hold of one of us because we need to raise some funds. 2020 is going to be a crazy year, so.
Great, thank you. So February 22nd, please put that on the calendar. We'd like to have as many people as possible. We'll come up with a theme and plan for that particular meeting. In the meantime, we are open to individual donations. I would encourage every member of this group to donate to the county party. Those funds will be used to fund the party, by our budget, as well as fund our elected officials and help elect Republicans. We have a couple committees that are using some of those funds for recruitment. Young Republicans Committee met a few months back, had 30 to 40 people in attendance, and they've been doing a great job getting young Republicans into the party. So again, I'd encourage you to contribute and participate both individually. We'll send out some envelopes and emails with ways to donate to the county party to keep everything moving along. As far as recruitment, we have some exciting news on that. We have 174 eligible precinct positions here in Natrona County. As of our last executive committee meeting, we had 73. Sorry, off by a little bit. We have 178 positions available, and we had filled 173 of those positions to date. So the executive committee and members of this body have been doing a great job recruiting for membership. Our goal is a full 178, and we're getting close. We've already received a couple people who are considering jumping onto the central committee, but that's rather impressive. And I'd like to thank our work coordinator, Joe McGuire, as well as our 4 ward captains for helping in these efforts. So a round of applause for those members of the executive committee. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, I'm going to have the Vice Chair, Kim Walker, come on back up and discuss the Reese Across America program that's being hosted by Natrona County Republican Women. Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so as many of you know, for the past, this will be our 3rd year, Republican Women have hosted the Reese Across America. I put flyers out for everybody. We are having a gala to raise the funds to place wreaths on all the veterans' graves in Natrona County. Last year we were able to place 4,000 wreaths on veterans' graves here. It was incredible. We had about 1,200 volunteers that came out to lay the wreaths. And it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. We all know that we need to, the thing to do is to support our veterans. It's October 12th. I have tickets available. If you would like to buy a table, that'd be great. I have several members here on the board: Susan Riker, Marcy Buckholz, Kathy Thomas, Karen Hinchy, and Annie Sanders. So if you'd like a ticket, we'd love to have you come. It's a super fun event. We have an amazing speaker, Michael Watts, who did 5 tours in Afghanistan in 5 years. So this is how we raised our money to place all the wreaths. We'd love to have you. And I'm going to... So Kyle Gamroth, he's out on the phone, but we just did 125 boxes with him, the Republican Women in the County Party, for those deployed. And it was an amazing event, yes. He did a great job. Kyle! He's on the phone, but I don't know if it's out of order, but Kyle, so right here, they just sent 125 boxes for those deployed. But there's about 300, right? About 300? We need to do about 175 more, so we're going to work on that. But I know there's a hat back here. If we can they need some more money for postage. So if anybody has an extra $5 or $10 in their pocket, they could really use some extra money to send those boxes, right? All right. That's all. Thanks.
Question, who's selected?
Hi, yeah, I'm elected.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another great event. If you haven't participated in the fundraiser or the Reese Across America laying, there's some great videos online as well as through the various websites that it's really just an incredible event. So take a look at those videos, take a look at what this is all about, and please participate and contribute to this wonderful program. Kim, thank you so much for what you're doing. This is really incredible. So really appreciate the work. Let's give Kim a round of applause. Okay, next item of new business, next Central Committee meeting. So we're going to be coming up to a very busy season here just after the new year within the Republican Party. We'll have a Central Committee meeting, we'll have County Caucus and County Convention so that's month to month to month, back to back, January, February, March. And then that will lead into State Convention in May. We will be planning the Central Committee meeting in January to help with the planning process for these events. Once we get the dates and the information from the state party, we'll begin planning the County Caucus and County Convention. Crystal McGuire is going to be chairing that committee again to put this event together. She did a wonderful job last year, it went really smooth. That was practice for this year because we're in a presidential race, so we expect quite a bit of increased attendance at that time. County Caucus is confusing for those who haven't been part of that in the past. We'll do our best to provide as much clarification and information as possible, but please do not be frustrated. It is a bit confusing just inherently, and we'll work with our education committee to get some information out there, as well as education events on how caucus and convention actually works. So be on the lookout for those dates coming up here in the near future. We've listed the upcoming meetings and events as far as what we have scheduled to date. So that's listed under number 9. We have the Reese Across America event on August 12th, August 22nd, Executive Committee meeting, December 3rd, Executive Committee meeting, and State Convention is already set in Gillette. And then finally, Saturday, December 14th is the wreath laying for Reese Across America. Madam Secretary, any other dates that we need to announce? Okay, great, thank you. With that, those are all the updates and meeting information. Yes?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Jim Anderson, 1-9, and
Bill Landon, 3-6.
We would just like to compliment you on a great job running this meeting. You are one of the best county chairmen in this state and would be a better state chairman also. So we just wanted to compliment you on a great job.
Senators, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I don't know if you noticed when Senator Anderson was getting to that mic, I did grab the gavel, so I wasn't quite sure where that was going. So thank you. I appreciate that. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Amy Womack, immediate president of the Wyoming Federation of Republican Women. Just wanted everybody to know we have our state convention in Riverton, October 4th and 5th. A lot of things if you are interested in going to see maybe online. And including seeing the military vehicle museum before it opens. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Before everyone leaves, we need some help putting the room away here. Now, there's actual specific instructions, so bear with me so I do not get in trouble. Now, Madam Secretary, which rows now that the room has changed? Okay. So the first 3 rows, the chairs stay, as well as the front of the room. Everything else behind the 3rd row needs to get put away, including my right side of the room up here. So leave the first 3 rows in the front, then we need help breaking down the remainder of the room. Thank you very much.